did Meghan Markle go from the balcony of Buckingham Palace to a rented house in Montecito, flipping whatever she's flipping in a pan and somehow trying to convince the world that she's better off? I think throughout this whole debacle with her trailer and her series, With Love, Meghan is partially due to the idea that she's trying to push that somehow slumming it in Montecito is better than being part of the royal family. And absolutely nobody in the world is buying this. Everybody thinks, I think, that Meghan Markle has taken several massive steps down and is just increasingly looking really pathetic because there's nothing in the world people want more to a certain extent than to be a king, a queen, a princess. What do all little girls want to be when they grow up? They want to be a princess. When they're 3 and 4, what do they wear around the house all the time? Tiaras and poofy dresses and all these things. Why? Because they want to be a princess. And absolutely nobody in the world thinks that Meghan Markle is on anything other than a downward trajectory. And because the reaction to the trailer has played so poorly, I can't see any other future for her but one that's really negative. Because there's just a series of things to look at here: what royals actually do, what Meghan Markle has portrayed them to do, how royals somehow seem more approachable than this elitist, out of touch woman in Montecito. So many things here. Meghan Markle completely and utterly missed the mark. And she will never reach the heights that she did in Buckingham Palace. Yes, she might make some more money now because no one in the world thinks that Meghan Markle is anything other than somebody who took the opportunity of a lifetime and squandered it in pursuit of mere greed, vengeance, pettiness, vindictiveness, so many different things. And because of that, everything for the rest of her life, I think in many ways, will be tainted by her treatment of the royal family and going from being with the queen on Buckingham Palace, something very, very few people in the world can ever have claimed to have done, to hanging out with her shallow, vain, and vapid friends on a TV series for money. So guys, we will go into this today. But if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network before, hello, my name is Brittany and I provide compelling royal commentary. So guys, smash that subscribe button. I would absolutely love to have you back. And this Tuesday, we will be doing the Crown Report, which is sort of my examination of what is going on in the other royal households. We have a couple of stories to catch up on, including the current case of Marius, who was the son of the Crown Princess of Norway and who was arrested in August for assault, violating a restraining order in September. So many things going on with him, and we'll bring you the latest and what to look forward to with the actual royals in 2025. Okay, so let's get to this story. And this is sort of, I guess you could say, a conglomeration of a bunch of different ideas, because I look through all this and I'm just thinking and I'm cogitating, and I like to analyze things because to me, analytics is so interesting. And it provides us with a viewpoint into, let's say, Meghan Markle, and particularly the reaction to this trailer. And so let's look at the ratio here for Meghan's trailer. She currently has 12,000 likes. Now, I actually just refreshed this page because I filmed an initial bit before this and then I refreshed it and it went up to 102 because it was originally at 93. But I think the other was still at 12. So she has not moved the 12,000 like metric much at all. But we have 102,000 downvotes. And so if you can get an idea here, the video itself has 1.2 million views. What this tells me is that literally 10% of the people who watched this trailer gave it a thumbs down. 12%, 10%. So 10% of the whole video. And just 1% of people who watched this actually gave this a thumbs up. Now, the Sussex Squad and other people will tell you that this is just a reflection of the royalists and everything, and that they're going on this campaign and disliking it. Now, while I have disliked it, I don't really think it's a campaign. I think it's really people actually reacting to what they have seen in this series, which is an elitist, out of touch woman who is completely and utterly tone deaf, trying to make herself, I think, maybe seem humble and likable from her Montecito mansion, inviting her very rich and famous friends while not inviting her in-laws, her own family, to this particular house. And we know how she's treated her staff. So all of this is creating a massive disconnect. And when it comes to this trailer, it really had one chance. here. Now, we might get another trailer within the next week and a half or so until the series drops on January 15th. But because of this trailer, Meghan Markle had absolutely one shot to make people like it. And she utterly and completely failed. And I don't think it's because of the cutting of the trailer. I think that it was cut pretty well. But the thing is, when it comes to Meghan Markle, she has already established a very negative public reputation. And it goes back to that image I showed you at the beginning of the video from Buckingham Palace to the slums of Montecito. Now, obviously, Montecito is not the slums, but when it comes to people's view of the world, there is no more exclusive and elitist club than royalty. There is nothing. There's nothing in terms of any other social class that's as elite as royalty. Anybody can, in theory, now this is very remote, anybody can become a billionaire, anybody can become a millionaire. If you have technically the qualifications, which is, I think you just have to be born in the United States and over the age of 35, you can run for president of the United States. Somebody can even write your name in to the ballot box. It might be yourself, but you can technically do it. You can pretty much do anything in this world. Now, obviously, we all have stipulations in terms of what our talents are and what our, let's say, opportunities are in some ways. We are limited by socioeconomic status and those sorts of things, but that's sort of just the reality of life. But when it comes to royalty, there's nothing bigger than that. There's nothing more exclusive than that because there are only two ways you can get in. You either have to be born in or you have to marry in. There's no two ways to go about it. Those are the only two ways. But let's say you are the young son of a woman who marries the Crown Prince of Norway, as in the case of Tamarit, who married Haakon and became the Crown Princess of Norway. She did have a son who became the Crown Prince's stepson. And although he is not blood royal, not working royal or anything like that, he did enjoy some of the trappings of monarchy. But how did he get there? Well, essentially by birth and by marriage. He happened to be the child of a woman who ended up marrying into a royal family. There is no other way to get in. Now, in some times in the olden days, they did give out more dukedoms at the time to people who, let's say, had great military successes, great political successes, those sorts of things. But when it comes to now, there's really only two ways in. And so to leave that, to abandon that, you already have people sort of scratching their heads going, why did you do that? Like, you get to serve people, you get to travel all over the world, you get, as Harry and Meghan want, a massive security apparatus to keep you safe, you get to live in palaces, you get to visit palaces, all these sorts of things. Why was that not enough for Meghan Markle? And she tried to spin it in a particular way, which is to say that basically she was pushed out of the royal family by nefarious forces, in this case, the R word, racism. And that is her claim. She is welcome to have it, but I don't really think that's the case. And as time has gone on, and as she's increasingly shown that she is more than willing to be a stooge for anyone who will give her a buck, that narrative has less and less bandwidth. Yes, there are still people who like her simply because of her race and nothing else. But when it comes to people disliking her, has more to do with her actions, her behaviors, and her treatment of the royal family and her employees than it does with anything regarding the color of her skin. And so as time has gone on, she played everything exactly the wrong way. So when they left the royal family, instead of dropping the exit bombshell without any sort of like forewarning or anything, they could have actually negotiated with the family to figure out a way to so that everybody could have, let's say, what they needed in the situation. Instead, they decided to believe that erroneously and quite stupidly, in my opinion, that they had more leverage than they did, and they got subsequently squashed by the royal machine. So you got to make sure you have the leverage. Harry and Meghan didn't. He's the spare. William is the heir. Ergo, William, Charles, the Queen all had infinitely more power in the situation than Harry and Meghan. Just because you're in the news headlines doesn't mean in the royal system that everybody's going to capitulate to you. And then you had Oprah Winfrey. And this definitely turned and ramped up to 11. You could say the people who like Meghan just simply based on the color of her skin and the perceived beliefs in her great accomplishments of being a mid-tier actress, paying a PR company up the wazoo to get her in front of the cameras, all these sorts of things. I mean, I personally think, regardless of what the Sussex Squad says, I don't think Meghan Markle has that many achievements really to put behind her, anything that I find all that impressive. Now, when it comes to Catherine, I could honestly say the same thing pre-marriage. There's not that much there that I could say, oh, that's a huge accomplishment, except for marrying a prince. That's where they're both equal. So they both ended up marrying princes, one very successfully, one very unsuccessfully. And so the Oprah interview played out, and some people came to their defense. And they did move the metrics somewhat in their favor. But as time has gone on, you got Netflix, where they disparaged his family. You got Spare, where they disparaged his family. She disparaged them a bit in Archetypes, claiming that she was basically housed in a hovel in South Africa. I'm like, that's not really a reflection on the royal family. That's a reflection on your beliefs of how the South African government treated you, which is not very diplomatic and not very fitting of a royal. And so, as time has gone on, people's attitudes towards her started to slowly shift. She swung people a little bit in her direction, but everybody's kind of, sort of on their own, flipping back. And the trailer for this series is a catalyst for it. I'm shocked again about how many people have come out and said, like, they wonder why Netflix spent all this money. The show looks terrible. So many. Let's see some of the latest ones. So we have here the critical drinker. Netflix must be seriously regretting that $100 million deal they signed with her. Obviously, Harry is there too, but she's, I think, the focus of a lot of the ire here. And then you have Adrian Curry says, of all the fake, cringe, and absolute things that I have seen in my life. You have to be careful what you say on YouTube sometimes. This chick pretending she is Martha Stewart takes the cake. And there are other people online who have posted negative stories. If you want to follow the video up above, I go into some of those more as well. Because to people, everything she's doing seems to be wrong. Sometimes you can't even put your finger on it, but it's rubbing everyone, I feel like, the wrong way. Even people who don't follow royals much. They're like looking at her trying to be Martha Stewart and going, you were on the balcony of Buckingham Palace and now you're trying to be Martha Stewart. Are you serious right now? And that again all comes back to the decisions Meghan has made. Meghan could have maybe launched the show much more successfully in 2021. By this point now, her public reputation is so bad. When this drops, everyone sort of hates it. It's the wrong time. It's the wrong show. It's the wrong premise. Her hosting it is wrong. Everything about it pretty much is wrong. And I will say as well, Meghan doesn't help herself in the slightest by having her friends like Mindy Kaling exclaim that, oh my gosh, this is the most glamorous moment of my life, when they're literally sitting in a random kitchen looking at a sponge cake or whatever the heck they're doing. No one is impressed by that because Meghan, again, was on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. And we all know if Mindy Kaling was at Buckingham Palace, she would think that is infinitely more glamorous. In Mindy's case, she's been to the Emmys, she's been to the Golden Globes. Those events, you could argue, are glamorous. Royalty is even more glamorous. She would be infinitely more impressed by being in Buckingham Palace than she ever would be in this random kitchen in Montecito. And we all know that. We all know that. So them trying to pretend this is the most glamorous thing ever, it's so fanciful. It just really boggles the mind, and it's so impossible as a random even person in the audience to even believe. No one believes that. And so the show again comes back to this really false premise in many ways. And she sort of had one chance, you could say, with the trailer to sort of prove people wrong and get people excited about it. But I would say she has done like the exact opposite. And she really did fail to, let's say, alleviate the fears. Instead of showing humility, she showed hubris. Instead of showing a sort of accessibility, she showed pretentiousness. Instead of trying to, let's say, walk the line between acknowledging her wealth and yet having the items, let's say, be affordable to most, she seems to come across as very elitist and very out of touch and tone deaf. And you add in as well, and this is something, again, she couldn't have not anticipated, but makes her look really bad, is the death of the stepson of her husband's former nanny. So this is Tiggy Legborn, and her stepson passed away in that terror attack that happened on January 1st, the same day Meghan launched her social media channel, the day before her video trailer dropped for her series. Her husband's dear ex-nanny lost her stepson. And so it makes Meghan look even more callous. It makes her look even more, it makes her look even more heartless because that is the sort of public reputation that she has. And her friends, I feel like, are trying to happy talk and tell us overly much to the point of absurdity how wonderful and amazing she is. And nobody's really buying it. People just aren't buying the nonsense. And so when you look at this series and look at Meghan, I don't think anybody's thinking here, hey, she's better off than she was 5 years ago. Because yes, the pursuit of greed might have filled her bank accounts, but the expense of pretty much everything else in her life. Because Queen Elizabeth is one of the most respected people on earth when she was alive. And still now, she's very respected for being apolitical, for service, for duty, for self sacrifice. Yes, she lives in a palace. Yes, she gets to wear tiaras and crowns. But that life, to a certain extent, is not easy. Not everyone can do it. But she gave something of herself to serve the people. While Meghan Markle, in comparison, has stopped serving the people because she's more interested in serving herself. And I think this series sort of proves that because it just seems like to most people, sort of a soulless money grab. It seems like a soulless money grab. Now, yes, she could turn that perspective around and her series might be wonderful and amazing. But the trailer, as somebody pointed out, shows the best features of the show. And if that's the best, that's not so great because royals, by comparison, it's funny, seem more approachable because what royals do, which I think is really fascinating as public figures, is they walk this fine line between, yes, being unbelievably wealthy in some ways. Sometimes they're not cash flush, but they do have access to tremendous pieces of jewelry that have been around for centuries. And they wear them and they glitter and they sparkle and they go to all these big formal events around the world. Prince Edward will be in the United States this week for the state funeral of Jimmy Carter, the former president. And so royals get to do these incredible things. But yet at the same time, they need to be approachable. They need to be somebody who's there interacting with the people, not in such a way that they make people forget who they are, but at the same time, too, having that connection. And I think what's fascinating about what the whales have been through this last year is that they will, I think, be perhaps the most compassionate members of the royal family ever because they have faced real grief. They have faced real struggles. Now, yes, William and Harry very much had something similar with the death of their mother. But I think as close of a unit as William and Catherine are, and as young as the children are when Catherine went through her health struggles, I think that will shape them in very unique and interesting ways when it comes to royalty. There's not really a case where a royal family has dealt with such an immense health crisis with somebody as young as Catherine is. And I think in many ways it will only be a blessing to them because when they go and they talk to somebody, they can go, yes, we've experienced not only just loss, but we've experienced struggles, cancer struggles, because cancer, like so many other diseases, it doesn't discriminate. So Catherine has experienced that. She can bring that compassion to others. Her children, what they've gone through has can bring compassion. Now, this is not an exact example, but I have read before that research has shown children who grow up in homes and they have siblings with special needs end up being more compassionate and empathetic as they grow up because of that experience. And I think the whales as kids, something very similar will happen to them. Now, the dynamic is obviously very different because they're in front of the world. But at the same time, they've seen their mom go through struggles. They've seen her, and I'm just speculating here. They've seen her struggle to get out of bed. They've seen her be sick. They've seen all these different aspects of her disease and fighting the disease. And as young as they are, that will leave a strong impression that I think will bring them into the future. And the whole family, especially William with the loss of his mom going through cancer with his dad and his wife. I mean, he has a whole different, I think, world perspective than someone like Harry and Meghan. Because Harry and Meghan, by comparison, they just look greedy. They just look elitist. Meghan prancing around in her Cartier jewelry while making a falafel or something. I'm not sure what she's making. A focaccia. That's it. I think she's making focaccia. It's like, that's not really approachable to people. She's wearing a Loro Piana sweater. And one of the things that probably looks a little bit like this. This is just like Lululemon. So it's not cheap, but it's not like uber expensive either. And she's wearing this, and I'm like, if she gets something on that, that's probably very fine woven wool or something. It's like she's not going to be able to clean that. There is nothing approachable about Meghan. Like, you even think of her jewelry. Meghan wears hugely expensive pieces constantly. I mean, the woman wears like a 3 carat pinky ring. Why? I don't know. It's bizarre. But Catherine, actually, a lot of her jewelry, except for state events, is actually very affordable in many ways. Kiki McConnell, like, that stuff is expensive, and it would definitely be a stretch for most people, but not so outrageous. But she also wears stuff that's 10 pounds, that's 15 pounds, 20 pounds, 30 pounds. Like, she wears things that are very affordable. So she walks this great line between, yes, being royal, and that means expensive clothes because you have to look good. And I'm sorry, but sometimes you got to spend more to get a really good look. And then other times being very affordable. Zara, H&M, those sorts of things. A lot of royals wear very affordable brands. And they do this and they balance the two. But Meghan is not like that. Like, she hardly wears anything that's under, let's say, $500, it seems like. Everything she wears is way over that. And so she's doing this show wearing all those very expensive pieces. And it's like, how is that supposed to be relatable to anyone? And so it's almost ironic that Meghan gave up the trappings for royalty and somehow became even more elitist, out of touch, and tone deaf than she did when she was a member of the royal family in palaces. In her mansion in Montecito, she is more removed. She is more in a bubble than ever before. And she had no concept that maybe, just maybe, this show would not work. It's too much flaunting of wealth in a time where people are mostly living paycheck to paycheck. There are items there that most people would never make in their kitchen or may never think to make for a party or anything like that. Everything she does, I feel like, sort of separates herself from other people. And so when it comes to the pitch of this series, I've made this comment before. Who is this series supposed to appeal to? Who's going to be interested in this? Especially because somebody gave up the most amazing job, most unique job in the world for something as pedestrian as being an influencer. She left royalty to be back down to a stinking influencer. Nobody is impressed. Nobody is clamoring to support her. Everybody thinks she's a joke and pathetic for doing that. There's just no way around it. It looks pathetic. It looks pathetic to go from standing next to the Queen of England, standing next to a random chef flipping focaccia or whatever she's doing. It's so lame. It's like really quite lame. It's quite lame because you can work within this system, and it's not easy, but you can find a balance in the royal system. Meghan didn't want to. She hated the royal family. She hated the restrictions they put on her. She hated how she couldn't control the narrative because she's trying to do it even now. The reason she has the comments turned off is not because she wants to make the world a better place or to, the terrors of social media and stuff like that. No, she's doing that because she can't handle negative criticism. That's the only thing. And she can't handle not being in control. And so when you look at this series, I just don't think it's going to do well. The trailer, even people who don't pay attention to royalty think it's ridiculous, think she's a joke, think her trying to be Martha Stewart is just laughably insane. And Meghan Markle has only herself to blame for that. Because maybe, just maybe, it might have worked if the series was in her home or in 2021. But it doesn't work because Meghan Markle is the one behind it. And everybody knows you don't go from Buckingham Palace to a rented house in Montecito without taking a bit of a hit. And she could have, again, negotiated a better exit terms, but she decided not to because she thought she was too good for the royal family. She thought they didn't give her enough money. So she was going to make it on her own. And you could say, yeah, she was somewhat successful there. But in the process, she has been turned into a global joke. So guys, let me know what you think of this video. Let me know how you think the series will play. I'd love to get your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you soon. Bye.